Know any good lawyers?
No, I don't know any good lawyers. But here's what I do know for sure. We need to stop letting lawyers bully us into silence because it's fucking ridiculous. The only reason that we don't know what is going on in the world right now is we have allowed bullies to use lawyers with threats of going to court. And that has kept us silent over issues that need to be talked about. They want to threaten us with a lawsuit because they think that that will keep us quiet. And it will, if it's one person at a time. But if everyone just stands up and says, here is the truth, if we all do that all at once, they can't sue all of us. That's all we need to do for a revolution. We don't need to take to the streets. We just need to tell the fucking truth. As for why I'm going to be famous, there's a couple reasons. Number one, I can prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the arbitration board just deletes evidence about racism. Completely. They just don't put it into the record. I can also prove that the government was covering up COVID infections. They were trying so hard to prove that I was lying about where I caught COVID, that what they actually proved was they knew one of my coworkers was sick. They allowed him to come into the office, but told no one. And then I got sick. And they told no one. And that's why I had to put a Facebook post to tell everyone else in the office, hey, I'm sick and you might want to get tested. And the reason why they were doing that is there was 3 people sick at the same time. And that meant that they were supposed to shut down the office, but they didn't want to do that. So they lied. And I can prove it. And unfortunately, I can also prove that I can see the future, which I know is going to make some people think I'm a crazy person, which is why I've spent 2 years proving that I can actually see the future. It's not just The Simpsons. It turns out that many writers can kind of see the future when they get into a disassociated state. And I came up with a crazy idea of the future. I never thought it was going to work in 2023. But when you see the idea now, it can work. And there is a way that I can make a lot of people a lot of money really quickly. And at the same time, expose the racism inside Ontario. Like magic.
Today's transmission, as we have said, is titled No More Secrets.
Aliens, aliens, motherfucking aliens. Are they real or are they not? Did we know and we forgot? Aliens.
Drone Dior bag situation has taught me reality is nothing like the movies. In the movies,
There's a reason for that. For the last 50 years, Hollywood has been trying to make us afraid of aliens. And it's because they're not aliens. And once enough people realize what they are, and why Hollywood has been trying to make us afraid of it, and why the United States government has been allowing it to happen, people are going to get angry. Something is going to happen this month, January 2025. I've been told to allow it to happen. Don't worry, people. It's good news. World peace is closer than you think. Just one more storm.
Don't believe the fear-based conversations happening about the phenomenon. We are in the middle of an awakening. It's happening. It's unfolding. We've known it was coming for a long time. People you never would have thought would be interested in the phenomenon are suddenly interested and curious. It's like, what?
How do you tell a story like mine? An average, well, attractive gay man who discovers that he's capable of remote viewing through song. Well, thankfully I don't need to, because it's already been told by this guy, Lee Harris. So thank you, Dr. Bialik. Your open-mindedness has saved me a lot of time. Until recently, all I remembered is I had a precognitive dream about September 11th. A boyfriend said he saw aliens. My novel, Are You Watching Me, had a lot of similarities to the Bruce McArthur killings. But I've lived a pretty public life, and anyone who knows me will tell you I was a pretty normal person until recently. And now, I can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that I'm capable of remote viewing and telling the future. And it's all a matter of public record. When someone corrects our bad behavior, we're supposed to thank them. And that's what I did in May of 2022, when I was being a bit of a jerk by the pool and someone called me on my behavior. And it was also on that weekend that I made a mistake. I performed a ceremony dedicating my life to Dionysus, while there may or may not have been an orgy happening nearby. And it was not long after that I met a man, and then I heard a voice. Today I experienced something that until now I thought only happened in movies and books. And it's the sort of thing like when I'm editing a book I would look for and like, no, I don't know if that's really believable. But it happened, and it was crystal clear proof that God is not only listening, but God is actively guiding us and doing things in our lives. And it's not really a thought I've really had before, but I haven't been back here for years, but I just have to show you how close. This is the place I worked where I experienced anti-Black racism and harassment. And I want you to show you where Lori DuPont worked. So Lori DuPont was a nurse in Windsor who complained about harassment. And she said that she had a guy that was harassing her all the time. And she complained to leadership over and over and over again for years that she was being harassed, and they did nothing. And eventually she was killed. And lots of promises were put in place saying, we're going to change the system. And we created Bill 168, largely because of Lori DuPont. And I don't have to walk too far, because right ahead of me is the parking garage for the hospital where Lori worked. And nothing has changed since 2005. In 2022, I was fired because I asked a manager to stop harassing me. And it's very clear, based on the evidence I've collected, there was never any intention of solving the problem. The woman is still working there. As far as I know, she is still harassing people. And there's been no consequence for her behavior. When I finally made it to the grievance board, well, we all saw how that worked. Rachel said something very racist, and her lawyer said, can we strike that from the record? And they did. They're doing absolutely nothing at all to protect people from harassment. And I want you to think, if you're a business owner, how much money have you been spending for your HR departments? How much money do you spend collecting evidence when all the government is doing is just deleting it? So you can see here, that's where Lori DuPont worked. And that was in 2005. We need to stop expecting that the government is going to change things just because they put something on a piece of paper. They only change things when we stand up and say, no more. Lori DuPont worked there in 2005. She asked for help and she was ignored. How much longer? In Canada, the easiest way to become invisible is to need help. I started to wonder, why was the system so eager to get rid of me, but so willing to protect predators like my old teacher and the magician. Everyone who knows me knows both of my parents were abused as children. Everyone knows that I hate child abusers. Just like everyone knows that my best friend was James Marentet, son of Rolly Marentet, one of the greatest labor leaders in Canadian history. I've heard of the National Day of Mourning in Canada. It's largely because of the work of Rolly Marentet. Rolly's eulogy was given by Ken Luenza. Ken, we haven't met yet, but I do know Troy, and we have several friends in common. Everyone knows that while I was being harassed, I was also canvassing for Gemma Gray Hall. Everyone knows that I have connections to several people in the NDP. Luckily, if Donald Trump wanted my phone number, all he would have to do is talk to his friend Wayne, who could get my number from Lisa. I also have friends that have partied with Kid Rock, but I can't talk about that. I can talk about how I met Joe Comartin. I met him through Adrian Jones. Eric, I had to apologize to you because your name did come up in the grievance. It was my mistake. Anyone on Windsor City Council will know this guy, Christopher Lawrence Bernard. And Christopher is aware of everything that has happened to me, but has not yet made a public comment on it. And I'm certain that Christopher will soon make a comment. Be the person your child thinks you are. In fact, I have connections to many people on City Council. The only person I don't have connections to is Mark. Mark made national news recently when he was dropped by the Conservative Party for saying that Justin Trudeau should be killed. Eddie went to school with my brother, and he's also dealt with some racism shit as well. It's because of things like this that happened to Eddie that I realized it wasn't just me. There's a problem in Windsor. Because everyone knows at the time this was happening, I was partner in a publishing company with Mayor Wilson, who was a friend of Philip K. Dick's, one of the most influential writers of the 20th century.
Where I first met Phil in 1972 when he first came to Fullerton, and he moved across the hall from my apartment. And Mary Lou Malone Staler she was Mary Lou Malone back then, and she and I were together the night we met Phil when he came knocking on our door. First outing was A Clockwork Orange. Then after that, we were pretty much inseparable, the five of us, Tim Powers, Mary Lou, Joel Stein, Phil, and myself. And the man we knew is not the myth that you all know. He was, Paul was saying he didn't walk around with mystical waves pouring off of him, and he didn't. He was just very down to earth. You talked a little bit about the Blade Runner the special effects that we got to see, and the studio sent a car down for him, and we went up and we spent the day. I remember when he first saw the script, and he was so upset about the Blade Runner project, and we had like days of talking him off the ledge when he was very upset about Ridley Scott directing, didn't like the script, didn't like who is this guy Harrison Ford, and I'm just like, oh my God, Phil. And then when we went up to see what I call the kiss and make up meeting between him and Ridley Scott in the studio, and as he was sitting there, and I was sitting next to him, as he was sitting there watching, we saw that first opening shot of Blade Runner where we've got the pyramids in the distance and the fire is coming up, and I could just feel his whole body language changed, and by the time we were done, he was fanboying all over Ridley Scott at the end of that. Let me tell you, he was always telling stories that you never knew whether they were real or not. So much of Phil, you had to take with a huge, not grain, but a huge salt shaker of salt. But at the end of the day, what does it matter? He was one of my best friends, and that's, at the end of the day, all that really matters to me is, so when I lost somebody, I didn't lose a great writer. I lost a great friend.
Through Mayor, I got to meet one of my childhood heroes, John Gray, creator of the TV series The Ghost Whisperer. But I also got to meet Al, and Al changed my life.
That we've been working really hard to get Al a new heart. And we're going to talk to him today and find out a little bit about what's going on his end.
I was in Iraq, working for the government on various projects. And I noticed that I was getting tired. I had been bitten by a local bug there. It's a thing called a camel spike. What I was noticing was that everything was starting to really slow down. I passed out while driving. And it was the doctors at GW Hospital that said, what's really going on is that your heart is in terrible shape. And found out that my heart was only working between 5 and 10% of what a normal person's heart is. I was told by the doctors that my heart was not going to get better, that I was at an end stage point, and I'm like, when you hear end stage, that freaks you out. I wasn't prepared for the devastating consequences of not just realizing that I need one of the most major organs in your body replaced, but the financial issues that come into play with it. So it's a thing where I'm shackled by a multitude of things. And because of that, it sets in your mind that there's no way out of the quicksand that you feel that you're in. You're constantly wondering, when's the next shoe going to drop out of 37 that have dropped already? A big thing that I want to do is talk about organ donation and tissue donation, because there are people who feel that they're too sick to give, at the end of things. But even tissue, even eyes, even skin grafts for people who are burn victims, things like that. There's so many things that people can do to help when they're no longer physically here. Since my great love is gaming and Star Wars and Star Trek and stuff like that, I hope to live long enough to see the trilogy end with The Force Awakens and stuff like that. I was very happy to be able to see the first film. I want to make some connections to people who I haven't seen or talked to in a very long time. Because I've lived in I was very comfortable in my solitude for the most part. And the way that I've lived life is now becoming an indictment on that type of living. We're social beings. And by being so isolated and insular, I think that's precluded a lot of support that I could have had from the beginning of all this. I went through a little bit of a mini crisis this early part of this week, where I really felt the solitude of the way I chose to live. And it's a thing where I sat back and who's going to think about me once I'm gone? And it was sobering. It was depressing. And it was a thing where I hope that no one goes through the feelings that I went through. But it was a thing where wondering where you fit in the grand scheme of things. A very humbling experience, and it's too bad that a damaged heart had to bring me to think about those things. But I think that type of living came from the fact that I lost a lot of family members as a young kid. And so instead of getting burdened and hurt by people for one reason or another, it's just easier to keep a certain distance and be a little aloof and enjoy my own solitude within myself and deal with people on a need-to basis. That's not the way to go through life. I'm grateful for the people who have reached out. Some people I have just met, Some people I've never met. Some people are voices from a past that I had completely moved. I thought I had moved away from years ago. And realizing that there are still people who remember me and still think about me is humbling. It's where you don't think that you had any impact, and you find out that you did. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I will survive this. I don't know if I'm meant to survive it. I don't know. These are questions that are always in my head. But I know that I am grateful for the fact that people have reached out and said, you're worthy of note.
The little voice I was talking to told me, don't worry, just find a hobby for a few years, which is exactly what I heard John Ramirez say later that year. This is my friend Brad. More than anyone, he can confirm that I have never been an enthusiast of UFOs. I don't go to conventions. He does. He's also friends with Brian, and everyone in Vegas knows who Brian is. Because of my connections to, the world, I felt confident that when I sent an email to my manager saying, hey, can you stop being racist, that maybe the racist behavior would stop. But it didn't. I honestly didn't think much of it. I sent an email saying, hey, this is racist. And then I went back to working for TOPS, which was Tomorrow's Ontario Public Service. I had recently been elected as the head of the organization to train other people how to be leaders. And then I sent another email, and immediately after I was suspended. My paper trail is about as clear as you can get, and it doesn't matter because they don't care. After dealing with racism for years, I put up this post, and they claimed that it was doxing, that I had put someone's life in jeopardy, while also claiming they weren't trying to paint me as a thug. That's when I realized I was dealing with two different versions of reality. There was the reality on paper, and then there was what they were actually doing. They gave me a letter saying, don't worry, Joe, you'll get your job back. And then they stopped talking to me. Both the union and the employer, they refused to release my vacation pay. There was no severance. They also refused to tell me why I was fired. When it became clear that they were just not going to talk to me, I put up a video. To force them to put it in writing, I went to the labor board, because I knew if I went to the labor relations board, they would be forced to put it in writing. I spent a few weeks preparing documents, looking at cases before. I realized what had happened to me happened all the time. Just no one talked about it. By that point, it was too late. I had to sell my house. The union refused to talk to me, and every time I asked why they refused to talk with me, they pushed the dates back further on the grievance. And then something annoying happened. The congressional hearings confirmed that the United States government has been lying about the existence of non-humans for a long time, and I had to re-examine my memories.
Okay, when it's out like this, it looks a bit more, I don't know. I have put a lot of work into this.
I started by looking at my books and where my ideas came from. And I found that as I focused on my craft, the voice became more clear. And then I was given a song. And I realized there was a problem. Almost everything I have ever written has actually come true. Some things I could pass off as coincidence. It's just weird. I now know someone who knows this guy, but not as weird as this. For the writing process, I do what I normally do. I got into a light trance, I closed my eyes, and I spoke to my writer voice and said, give me a future for this person. And I realized that is not how most people write. But, the NDA said I couldn't talk about racism, so I made up a story. The R&B industry was actually a cover for an international human trafficking ring founded on black magic. Miska comes to the crossroads of the world, Windsor, to sell his soul to the Nain Rouge in exchange for becoming a rock star. This was before Sinners was released. When I saw Sinners and the vampires started singing and dancing, I turned to my boyfriend and said, that is not a vampire. That's a leprechaun. Rob is a sexy nerd that doesn't want to deal with the darkness inside him. That felt like a very pointed commentary on my first marriage, but it's also similar to my 2014 novel, Fallen Hero Rises. This is what he looked like originally. The voice I've been talking to keeps telling me to find my sword. So I said, what sword is that? You mean the sword of Cassandra? That's a weird coincidence. After I was given that song, I saw a psychic in which she strongly implied that I had a spirit guide. And she looked at Michael and said, one more thing left to lose. After that, I developed a rash over my entire body that forced me to quit my day job teaching, and I started hearing the voice again. I spent all of my time working on Devil's Mountain. I realized it was similar to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but that's just a coincidence. I couldn't pass it off as a coincidence when Michael's father died. Wayne was the best man I've ever met. Some of the storylines were just a little too specific to discount as coincidences.
Aliens, mother.
Maybe the voice was right. Maybe the patriarchy is about to end. Because we can see through the veil of bullshit. Because I've led a pretty public life, I can prove that I was a skeptic until I did the work. That's why I can tell you that systemic racism is real. Because they're going out of their way to make the process as hard as possible. When we finally had a date where they were told to produce evidence, the province just disregarded it. They ignored disclosure, so I had to do a post, an open letter to Lisa Gretzky, and suddenly they were willing to disclose. I did start recording things because I wanted to disassociate, and this was a way for me to talk to myself without actually, talking to myself, but I just felt like I had to record this. It's March 25th. As far as I can tell, I'm finally today going to start litigation. The date's been pushed around so many times, it's ridiculous, but today at 11 o'clock, we were supposed to start litigation. Rachel is finally going to try to convince the arbitrator that she had just cause to fire me. And the evidence, once you see it, is... Well, the evidence, I've seen it, and I know now that it's sickening how little effort they put. They put little effort into it at all. They didn't even try. There's zero reason in there to terminate someone. But they have very, very, very detailed records about COVID. Like pages and pages of notes on COVID infection rates and things like that. But not a single word about my bad behavior. So they've proven that they're capable of taking very detailed notes, but not about this. And it's because they don't care. They truly believe that the simplest, easiest thing was just, let's just fire Joe, pay him off $100,000, make him go away, and let's just get on with our lives. Because they were trying to do as little work as possible. They are destroying people's lives because they are fucking lazy. They're just playing a game of chicken in the name of the government, using taxpayer money. I don't know what's going to happen next. I know that I should get my job back because there's nothing in there. Like, their records show that I was an amazing employee. Not a good employee, an amazing employee. There's sections that say, wow, you're doing such a great job. And there are letters of appreciation from clients. A couple. That's the evidence that they're submitting for the reasons why they fired me. They think that they're untouchable. They're not. The only thing that keeps them in their positions is that people are afraid. And I'm not afraid anymore. Now, Rachel is racist. That's not up for debate. I've worked with her. The way she makes black people feel is not okay. Now, I can't ever prove that to anyone, but what I can do is prove that she fired me for no just cause.
Talk and for me to hear out Mr. Murphy and his concerns with what he believed were anti-black racism in the workplace. And I know in that meeting I also let him know the steps that we were taking.
Did he give any kind of specificity about you, about examples of you demonstrating anti-Black racism?
There were no examples given, really, because there was nothing that I had ever done. To exhibit anti-Black racism, Mr. Murphy did say that I was afraid of him, and the managers were afraid of him because he was a big Black man. But that was the only piece that I can remember at the time that he might have said during that meeting.
So did he say, was it basically like an accusation that you're afraid of him? Is that how it played out? Or like maybe kind of paint the picture for us a bit?
Yeah, for sure. Mr. Murphy had said that the managers in the office were all afraid of him, and that he accused me of being afraid of him because he was a big Black man.
How did you respond to that?
So I believe he had already provided that information to Melissa about his concerns, that we were afraid. And so I did try to explain to Mr. Murphy that I was not afraid of him. I had never, ever felt physically threatened by him. And again, based on his accusations, tried to explain to Mr. Murphy and his union rep that I wasn't afraid of him because he was a man who was Black and is certainly bigger than me because I'm not very big. And I was explaining that I have a number of friends who are Black. Many of them are much bigger than Mr. Murphy. They happen to be professional basketball players. So I was trying to explain that, yes, I have friends who are bigger and they are Black men, and that I'm not afraid of them. And I'm also not afraid of Mr. Murphy.
So did Dale actually delete evidence? Let's find out. Everything will be forwarded to the appropriate authorities, and I'll let you know what their decision is. While we're waiting, let's learn some magic.
So I'm reading through old CIA files. Here's a good starter. It's just the CIA basically, in their words, not mine, showing that a brainwave can turn into a particle just like a radio wave turns into a photon. So to start, I was reading a declassified document on warp drives. That's weird. Basically, bending space in one way and at a higher point in another causes space and time to move around you. This was written in the 80s. It was a concept, but it's talking about the Large Hadron Collider, like what CERN does. Now we go to a file like this, where they're studying research in human paranormal abilities. So think about the gateway process. I did a video on this. I did 2 videos on these concepts. Watch them first, they're pinned, or just watch this one and I'll do my best to explain it. But this is basically the 4th dimension. This is a tesseract in 4D. Think about Interstellar at the end when he goes in the black hole and he's manipulating the past. Picture this is your future, say it's a kitchen, this is your present, your bathroom, and this is your living room, which is the past, like your house. But they're all moving by default of nature and intersecting at different points. So when he enters the black hole and goes into Murphy's room, he's not in the 3rd dimension anymore, he's in the 4th. Therefore, he can manipulate the past. So when you map out something like the Flower of Life, which I have a video on also pinned, watch it or don't, how does all this work? There's 5 dimensions. Now here is a good example of all of these, but it's 2D. It's, we can't really map that out. We can't perceive it. But picture line, dimension 1, square, dimension 2. That would be where we live. You can go up, down, left, right, forwards, and backwards. It's 3D. Then you have the 4D, which was the tesseract I just showed earlier, Murphy's room. And then a 5-dimensional cube, which turns into a light hologram. What the fuck is a light hologram? First, just understand how dimensions work. If you had an anthill, a pet anthill in a 2D space, it could never know you exist because it can't perceive you. So you dump a bucket of water on it, and it's like their whole world flooded as an act of God. Us living in the 3D could never perceive this or this. But we have proof that this exists because we have space and time and ways to manipulate it. So now we look back to these CIA files, and they show even in the 19th century that physicists knew that the 3D was not enough to prove the fundamentals of life, of nature. And they go on to say that it's more so our consciousness projecting thoughts out that affects our reality. And again, really weird that the oldest history we have, people knew this, but this is that flower of life I'm talking about overlaid on a quantum carpet, which is used to measure density and spaces between particles. So these guys knew something we didn't, and they figured it all out with circles. So picture something like this being the universe we live in, projecting light inwards. Our consciousness would be a part of that because we're creating particles with our thoughts, whether we can see them or not. Kind of goes over the science of manifesting, also heavily seen in the Gateway files, proves that we live in a 5-dimensional reality, and by physics and getting as far down as the quantum level, it's a hologram of light. And again, the platypus proves this. We live in a hologram of light. I'm not saying this, I mean, I kind of am, but I'm just reading off these files. We live in a hologram of light, and we produce electromagnetic impulses through our brain, through our heart, that can directly input on our reality. So now you think about stuff like fear-mongering. Little out there, but follow me. If we're all focused on something bad is going to happen. If everybody loved more, it would directly change this, because as a collective, we have more power than as a singular being. I mean, I know tons of people who would talk about manifesting. In fact, all of my rich friends swear by it. I'm starting to myself because I see results. Go listen to those Gateway tapes. They will open your mind and change your life.
The time is 9:03. I have just left Michael's. I'm trying to be scientific. Did I have a vision of a young man who recently passed, or was it just a coincidence? A few days ago, Michael and I were driving down Riverside Drive, and we passed Sandpoint Beach, and both of us pointed out that it was so silly that people used to swim from Sandpoint Beach to Pesh Island, because everyone knows that you can't do that. Every year people die. And we were just talking about that, like, on the weekend. Tonight, I was lying in bed at Michael's. I laid down, put my feet up, and I jumped because I saw a young man in the closet. Now, for I would say a millisecond, I thought real person, but I could clearly see that it was impossible if there was a real person there. And then as soon as I said it's impossible for a real person to be there, it went. But I thought maybe it was going to be Michael's dad, but no, it was a young man. And I've seen pictures of his father when he was young, so it was not that person. I didn't recognize him. About 10 minutes ago, we were on Facebook, and Michael was on Facebook, and he saw something on Windsor Car Spotters that police and ambulance had been called to Sandpoint Beach. And immediately we knew someone has died because it happens all the time. We were just talking about it. And then I thought, we were just talking about it. It was 2 young men, and I saw a young man. I'm recording this now to remove bias and potential for bias later. It is now 9:06. They have, as far as I know, they have not released the identity of the people. I have no way of knowing what this person looks like. But I'm recording this now, and I'm hoping and praying that Michael is correct. He believes it is a family from a foreign country, because everyone that is local knows that you can't do that. And I'm praying that he's right, because I think it was a local person. And I'm praying I'm wrong. that I'm recording it. And one way or another, I will know if what I saw was related to this or if it was just no. Why are some people allowed to commit crimes and others are not? It's white privilege. And it's time for us to end this silliness. I know it looks bad, but this corruption ends as soon as enough of us say, enough is enough.
Enough is enough. We're getting sick and tired of this corruption. We are not slaves, and we're not afraid. Do you hear me now? They break laws to make themselves rich while children starve. You are not kings. Noam Chomsky sings plutocracy. Enough is enough. We're getting sick and tired of this corruption. We are not slaves, and we will be brave. Do you hear me now? They break laws to make themselves rich while children starve. You are not kings. Gord Downey sings plutocracy.
Okay, let's talk about the government. More specifically about how money's spent. We're sending guns overseas to kill children in the street, and we can't afford to eat while the home's a luxury. The wealthy control the government, keep us terrified and poor and compliant. It should be clear to see that they don't work for we, so it's time to hold them accountable for enough is enough. We're getting sick and tired of this corruption. We are not slaves, and we won't behave. Do you hear me now? They break laws to make themselves rich while children starve. You are not kings. Hear the people sing. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but all your lies cost me my home. The world's insane. We're going down the drain with plutocracy. We are not free. With plutocracy.
The universe keeps getting weirder. I'm using TikTok to record this on July the 19th. I have absolutely no intention of sharing it at this point. Because of this I think I just got the last piece of confirmation I need that I am capable of remote viewing. I just can't ignore it anymore. And I can now prove it. Because I'm right now in my boyfriend's bedroom. And on May 23rd, I was in this room and I saw a ghost. And it was a ghost of a young Caucasian man, who I now realize is Dalton Bartnick. Now I saw this, I'm going to say now, people that know me can confirm. And I know that's biased, so I recorded video. On May 23rd, I saw a ghost. And right after I saw the ghost, there was a drowning at Sandpoint Beach, which is about maybe 10 minutes from here. So I assumed at the time that the person I saw was the person who drowned. Now the person I saw was Caucasian, and the person that drowned was not. Now they didn't find his body for 2 days. A couple of days later, the identities of the people that drowned was made public, and I had a brief moment where I sighed and said, oh, thank God, I'm just crazy. And the second I had that thought, Michael showed me Dalton's picture and said, this man is missing. And I looked at Michael and I said, that man is dead. Now the confirmation I received today, Dalton was not reported missing until May 24th. I saw him on May 23rd. I've never met Dalton to the best of my ability. I have no knowledge I've ever met him. But I saw a ghost on May 23rd, the next day that man was reported missing, and I can't ignore that. My impression is that Dalton was murdered. His body may be hidden in a wall. He might not be alone. I am not comfortable making any of those statements because I could also just be a crazy person. I'm hoping I'm a crazy person. Because if I am like Bashar, I have to change my life. If I'm a crazy person, I can just take medication and get on with life. But if I am capable of other things, I think I have a responsibility to do other things.
Just going to record this because it might be easier. So here's the dark one. Now this is actually what is the inspiration for Fallen Hero Rises. So apparently I wrote it in, the first draft was in 1987, and I do use names of real people from high school, so I'm going to make sure I take them out. And something about conjuring the demon, that's going to require a bit more. What the fuck was I doing?
Please keep in mind, in the future there will be points of no return. Like when some of you have gone down the rabbit hole far enough and long enough, there is a point of no return. There is the choices that you have made. Freedom is you and is within you.
I've talked a little bit about the visions I saw for other people in my movie, but The strangest part is the vision I saw for myself. Because I got a very different view of what reality is supposed to be. And if it's right, my life is about to get a whole lot weirder.
I'm going to record this, not sharing it. But I had a dream last night that was not a dream. It felt just like the other ones. I'm standing on a beach and I'm surrounded by hundreds of people.
What if an alien came down, gave you a mic, and said for the next 60 seconds, whatever you say?
Stop fighting. All of us are running around like children. Like our parent has left the room or the babysitter has stepped out. We're children causing chaos because our parent isn't around. Who's our parent? God. In the West, we've treated God like a parent because we got used to the church acting like a parent. For a very, very long time, the church told us what to do and we obeyed. But we don't believe the church anymore for various reasons. And because we don't trust the church, we don't trust God. And because we don't trust God, we think we can do whatever we want. Children, someone has to say this, so I guess it will be me. I don't care who started it. Stop. I don't care who threw the first punch. Don't throw another one. Fighting is wrong. Now, this is something that we teach our children, right? They have to know that in kindergarten. Children are taught this, but adults have forgot it. So, a reminder. I don't care who you're fighting with right now. Stop. So in case you have forgotten, there is one race, the human race. There are forces that want to divide us. It is time for the human race to come together and look at the people that are separating us. There is an explanation. It's really simple, but you're not going to like it. We've just been lied to about what God is. The church wants us to believe that God is this man sitting on a throne in heaven, controlling every little event. And that's just childish. It's really just a new form of Zeus. Full disclosure, I am a witch, so my definition of God might be different than yours. In my religion, there is an intelligence to the planet. The planet itself has intelligence, and we are just part of that intelligence. Shirley MacLaine once got in trouble for saying, I am God, and I think that's because people don't understand what that means. It just means that we are one planet, and human beings are part of that planet. We are an organism that works inside of the planet the way that blood cells work inside of our body. There is no distinction between us and the planet. And that combined thing, all of the intelligence that combines everything, every living organization on the planet, that's God. God doesn't care if you succeed. Because if you succeed, somebody else will fail. So if you want to succeed, fight. Prove you're worthy. So, and that's, I think there's a biblical thing there, God helps those who help themselves. When things are wrong in the world, we can't just say, well, God can't be real, because if he was real, he'd fix this. That is the act of a child. It's time for human beings to just grow up. Because every single problem that exists right now, we could solve. But we have been conditioned to be passive. Because there are people in power that want us to stay passive. They don't want things to change. But that's not God. That's humans. We'll try that again, this time in focus. This is my journal from 2001. And in here, there's back to here first. Just showing you that it's a full journal. It's not something I made for the movie. This is my whatever. And then on September 11th, weird coincidence, I dreamt about twin
twin planes that looked like lethal needles flying directly through twin towers. Weird coincidence. This is something I have only told very few people in my life. And it gets weirder. How the fuck did I forget I had spirit guides? I spent the last couple weeks reviewing journals, and I found one from November 8th of 2000. And in it, I talk about my spirit guides that have been with me my entire life, that I have no memory of. It says, I saw Alexa. I believe she is another spirit guide for me, perhaps the one I saw alongside the soldier a couple of months ago. I didn't record that entry. So apparently I had an entry where I met my spirit guide, and I decided not to put it on paper. But anyway, keep going. She is a young woman, late 20s, early 30s at most, with blonde hair, cropped to her shoulders. She is beautiful with creamy skin and high cheekbones. She could be a model. I saw her wearing a white cloak or cape, almost a ice blue thing, tinge to it. She called to me through the woods, and I spent a lot of time just enjoying the vividness of my sight. And then I talked of my apparently I have another spirit guide named Jeremy, who again I have no memory of whatsoever. Apparently I just called him Jeremy. He's my guide. He's been my guide for a long time. I remember as a teenager, I would sometimes in meditation go to a mountain area. Jeremy, the soldier, would always be there. He was always a silhouette. I've never seen him as clearly as I've seen Alexa. I think I've been afraid of him. Now, if you have known me at all for the last 20 years, have you ever once heard me talk about my spirit guides? How the fuck did I forget this? So I know that no one is going to fucking believe this, but I do not remember writing this in this fucking book. I've just been taking pictures, and fucking weird. And this one, describe your higher power. I don't fucking remember writing this. This is fucked. And this is kind of what I've been... Fuck! I know that no one's going to believe me, but I don't remember writing this. And that's the fucking guy I've been drawing. Try that again. This time a little bit calmer. So I've been going through the bins of books, taking pictures. I'm doing it for a couple of days. This one is by Shakti Gawain. It's a workbook. I guess I bought it at some point. I think it was when I was with the magician, I'm guessing. But I don't really remember. And I can see that most of the book is not completed. So I didn't actually do most of the book. But I started to. And it's a workbook, so you're supposed to say things like, what do I think God is? I say my higher intelligence is ever present. Faint like an echo. I mean, I don't remember writing this at all. It is my handwriting. The part there it gets weird is it's where it says, describe your higher power. And I say that it looks exactly like Echo from my novels. I show how she's dressed, and it is like I have drawn her. Again, without remembering this, I've also seen the Caucasian man, the one that I'm calling Sanchez. Fuck. I wrote this at some point in the past, and have absolutely no memory of it. And then I basically just stop. I remember my guides. I remember that they exist. I would like to communicate with them more. The next thing I do is say, close your eyes and try. And then I put the book away and never touch it again and forget about everything. So I think I did get in touch with my higher power. And she said, forget. Who is the lady? All I know for certain is that she's real, and I can communicate with her, and she seems to be helping me out, arranging things I never could have arranged myself, like an invisible hand. This is Matthew Brown, who wrote the document called Immaculate Constellation. Whatever is talking to me seems to be talking with Matthew as well, because we're on the same schedule. It's a weird coincidence that we started our Substacks on the same day. This is a pattern that is repeated. Matthew will do something, I will do something on the same day and find out about the connection afterward. Maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe something's trying to help us. This message is for the magician. I don't have to say your name, because everyone knows who you are. And everyone knows what you've done. And you think you're protected. But God sees what you've done. The lady is tired of your bullshit. So you go run and tell your friends that their time is over. Because she's about to expose all of you. For real. So you might want to come forward now while you have some control over the narrative. Because your time is up. The question some of you are asking is Joseph telling the truth? And to that I say, does it matter? If there was a way to transform Windsor and Detroit into one of the greatest tourist destinations on the planet, does it matter where the idea came from? Maybe God works in mysterious ways, or maybe I'm just really good at convincing you that God works in mysterious ways. But I think we can all agree, if just 20% of Christians actually acted like Christ, we could have world peace in 10 years. If there was a way to feed every person, and to clothe every person, and to house every person, would you want to know? What does Windsor do better than anywhere else in the world? We need to see beyond the veil, or think outside the box, to look at solutions. But some people don't want us to see beyond the veil, because it disagrees with their religion.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey ports? It seems like the American people have a big disconnect.
The government knows what is happening. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows.
Wanted to ask you about drones. We had the issue in New Jersey before the election where there are all these people thought UFOs or an attack of the killer drones. And I believe you're doing something about.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I know I can't tell you who it was and what it was, but
Yeah.
I can't really tell you. I'd love to tell you actually, but it's not a big deal.
What is a story? If magic is semantics, then stories are spells. And every story has the ability to transform you into a completely different person. Joseph Campbell wrote about the power of myth. Whether the story is historically accurate or not, it can impact you. Some of the most powerful stories are fictional. The mystics believe that all stories come from God, and that every story is a lesson. What lessons are you learning? Are you telling your story? Or has your story been erased from history? Stories tell us symbolically how to defeat our enemies. It also teaches us how to get the most out of life, how to find joy. And stories make it easy for us to spot the villain. So what is a zombie? A zombie is just a person who has been turned into a worker. They no longer question why they are working or if they have to work. To build an empire, you need zombies, people with one shared identity, often centered around religion. But over time, the religion becomes less important than being a zombie. The easiest way to destroy evidence is just don't write it down, and then people will forget all about it. If you see points of data across various points in time, you can draw conclusions. But if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. In the patriarchy, truth is only spread mouth to ear. The truth is never in writing. In the patriarchy, one man in charge decides what is true for everyone else, and all contradictory information is suppressed. The only goal is to maintain power. This is a process called whitewashing.
Caroline, the DOJ and FBI have now concluded there was no Jeffrey Epstein client list. What do you tell MAGA supporters who say they want anyone involved in Jeffrey Epstein's alleged crimes to be held accountable?
This administration wants anyone who has ever committed a crime to be held accountable, and I would argue this administration has done more to lock up bad guys than certainly the previous administration. And the Trump administration is committed to truth. That they promised an exhaustive review. That's what they did. For any further details, I would refer you to the Department of Justice.
No more secrets.
Speaker, earlier the Premier answered a question from the Leader of the Opposition saying he acknowledges that anti-Black racism exists in Ontario after not answering the same question yesterday. And after centuries of anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, and racism against people of color, I think all of us who were born into privilege need to answer the question about institutionalized and systemic anti-Black racism in Ontario. What specific actions is the government going to take to combat systemic and institutional anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, and racism against people of color in Ontario?
I think this is an important conversation for all of us to have. And there are many examples of systemic racism across Ontario, but we have developed a cutting-edge applied learning program to equip members of the Ontario Public Service with anti-racism knowledge, skills, and tools needed to build a public service that is more inclusive, equitable, and responsive. Thank you, Speaker. So to be clear and to repeat, our government has zero tolerance for racism, hate, or discrimination in all of its many forms.
Now, the times when capitalism has been fairer, it hasn't been because our policymakers all suddenly realized that they needed to do things better and be nicer. It was because we had organized political and social movements that were able to strong, powerful unions that were able to meet the power of corporations as they attempted to get their way within the state. Neoliberalism was about rigorously reasserting class control in the context of what one sociologist has called a crisis of ungovernability. centralized, almost authoritarian control. And that's why we got neoliberalism, which was crushing the labor movement, crushing social movements. It's why today, in the wake of, all these crises, we have these rigorous, rigid laws against protest, trying to keep everyone in their place. This is how state power works under capitalism. And if we want to change it, it's not just enough to say, we need to do this. We need to influence this policy. We need to build movements that can make politicians just as scared of ordinary people as they are of big corporations.
The purpose of white magic is to learn control over your own mind so that you cannot be manipulated by other people or by demonic forces. The mental palace technique allows you to prepare for future events, practice so that you will know how to respond when you are in a situation. And magic lets us confront our demons in a safe and healthy way. If you want to be a warrior, you have to confront your demon. You can use any story you want, whether it is truth or fiction. The important part is, what did you learn from the story? How did the story change you? How do you deal with the loss of a loved one? How do you deal with global conflict? Your story will be different than any other person's story, but there are similarities. Stories show us how to become better human beings. Let's pretend. If you are a magician and the gods are real, what should you be doing right now? If you're a Christian and the Holy Spirit and Jesus are real, what should you be doing right now? And if you don't have a faith, what would Buffy be doing right now? Think of what these people would do and then start doing it. On paper, I've been working with religious missionaries from Atlantis and the goddess for 40 years. But maybe that's just a story. Maybe there is a phenomenon that we do not understand that is interacting with humans and helping us grow into different people, helping us evolve. Or maybe it's magenta. Imagine for a sec, if men and women unite, the church loses all power, so the church must turn men into monsters. It does this with a very simple magic trick, a big lie. Men have been convinced that homosexuality is rare and wrong, when in truth it is neither. Because being gay was a death threat, gay men learned how to hide, and then they formed secret societies. We now understand that the human brain is not fully developed until the age of 25, which is why magicians try to convert people younger than 25, and they play a very simple game. Find someone young, make them do something they would not normally do, and then make them ashamed for having done it. Do this to everyone, and no one talks about it. The first step in growth is facing your shadow. You must face what you fear. The others speak to us through our art. Our stories are their stories. And that my story would send a specific message. Fear of being gay has destroyed America. In 1946, Americans created their own special version of the Bible and made certain changes, and then tried to convince everyone else it was the best version of the Bible. Science has a very different perspective on what the male of a species is supposed to do.
The leadership of NATO referred to him as daddy. So maybe in these resolutions going forward, we could have a little bit of recognition of like Daddy Trump.
What percent of men are gay? Go check on ChatGPT and you'll see a big lie. And the church encourages this for a strange reason. If you are terrified of being perceived as gay, you will not speak to your spirit guides. That's why we need journalists to investigate, to find out the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. When people in positions of power lie, it disintegrates society. Remind yourself, you are not your job title. You are a divine being in human form. And and so is everyone else. If you see someone make a mistake, tell them. Help them face reality so that they can grow up. If you want to learn magic, you have to know yourself. Divine forces are not fooled by word games. If you have not dealt with your sexual issues, you need to. Now, wouldn't it be great if there was a place where men could go to deal with their sexual issues? A place where they could confront the beast inside them and grow up. A place that studied exactly what human beings are capable of. Patriarchy has whitewashed our history because it wants us to be good workers. Do not question anything. Why is Windsor called the City of Roses? If you ask, people will say it's a big mystery and that nobody knows why it's called the City of Roses. And that's a lie. Something I was told by the voice and have now confirmed is true. Once upon a time, Windsor was Sin City, known for its bars and strip clubs. Windsor was Party Central. Windsor is known all over the world as South Detroit. So why is it that citizens only know about this history and nothing about its real history? When Windsor had several black-owned businesses, and those business owners were arrested, their homes and businesses were burnt, and their history was destroyed. That happened here in Windsor, and it has been erased from our history. Why was it erased? Because we wanted to impress American business owners and convince them to send jobs to us. To convince Americans that we were white enough to get jobs. Windsor is known as the automotive capital of Canada, and we're not known for much else. I think that needs to change. We have erased our history to appease Americans, and we have lost our identity. I know how to make people a lot of money very quickly. And more importantly, I can help with the homeless crisis and the mental health crisis. We truly can turn Windsor into one of the biggest tourist destinations on the planet. But you're probably wondering what the catch is, right? Well, there is one, but most people won't mind it.
Full disclosure, I'm an animal lover, dog lover, but that doesn't matter. You just can't be doing that. I understand the mice, the rats, maybe a rabbit, but these poor little beagles, you look at their face, and whoever, leaked it out, I want to thank them, because this was all done in secret. That's another frustrating thing.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford, pictured here, getting a great idea about where to go for lunch. He's thinking either Burger King or Dairy Queen. Kind of 50-50. Although he would also consider Sandwich Duke. Soup Baron? I don't know. Anyways, he continues to be unimaginably evil. And this one's real bad, folks, as he has won a court battle to keep the healthcare staffing shortage numbers a secret. You see, in a recent Freedom of Information release, Global News got this document, showing the healthcare workforce challenges. Although unfortunately, all of the numbers were redacted. So we know we have a shortage, we just don't know how much. The government is very specifically hiding the numbers of staffing shortages in the healthcare system, and fighting in court to do so. Why? Because the Ontario Privacy Watchdog found that revealing them would be economically damaging. Things are so bad that telling you how bad they were would mess up the economy. So we're just not telling you. You see, the government argued that telling you how bad things are would lead health unions to negotiate for higher salaries. What a nightmare! If we told people we were short on staff, we'd have to pay our staff. So rather than pay our staff, we're just not going to tell you. The information's not confidential, but all they really had was blaming others. They blamed the pandemic and they blamed the Liberal government. Worth noting, Doug Ford was in charge during the pandemic and has been ever since. If he wanted to do anything about this, he could have. Like, how is this always the way that these conservative governments do it? They look around at the problems that they've caused and said, God, someone should fix this. Who's responsible? I'd love to speak to the manager. It's you. It's always you. I'm sorry, if you are keeping the staffing shortages secret in order to artificially hold wages down, that's probably part of why you got a staff shortage. Like, Good Lord. Anything but taking care of healthcare workers. I seriously can't believe it.
You know, I just mentioned to him, don't get bullied, because we know where he's going, and stand firm, just be strong, and we have your back.
Thank you, Doug. I will include this clip in the documentary about how you are bullying black workers and forcing them out of the civil service. And I'm going to take your advice, Doug. I'm standing up to you. Because your type of racist bullshit is destroying our country. And no more. If only you had someone that could see the future. Mr. Ford, I've offered many times to help you. I told you we were heading into a dark time. I told you there were forces. Anyway, if you actually want to know what happens next, read the damn emails I sent you. You have my number. I can help you. You just have to stop being so fucking racist. All it will take to turn Windsor and Detroit into one of the greatest tourist destinations on the planet is for Doug Ford to apologize for what he's doing to black workers. You have all the information you need to make a decision, so decide.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come.
Once was lost, but now I'm found. There's a preacher by the stairs as he looks at me and frowns. I once was blind, but now I see. There's a housewife from Nebraska, and she kicks her child and leaves. Oh, all my life I've waited for the light of love to shine, but then I read the papers and I can't help but wonder why we try. So I cannot sing Amazing Grace.